Hello, and welcome once again. Today's video assignment is going to cover the last few chapters of Neil Postman's 1985 book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. If you have not had the opportunity to read this book, let me suggest that you do. Postman covers in this book how the entertainment factor of television has taken over in America as our primary source of preferred information. I can certainly see some of the ironic points about television that Postman brings to light, like how he is asked to go on TV to promote his book about how he thought Americans were watching too much TV. Postman also covers his views on how he feels the medium of television has affected religion, politics, and education. He does not paint a pretty picture for how he thinks TV has affected these things. I have enjoyed reading this book, and it is full of Postman's insights, but I do feel Postman comes across as being very cynical. It would seem by his writings, he does not seem to see the medium as a useful tool, but more as a way to distract our minds. Let's start with religion. We have all at some point been flipping through the channels and landed on a TV evangelist. It was bad and so far off from what we believed, but yet you couldn't look away. The reason you didn't immediately turn the channel was because it was somewhat entertaining. A well-known TV evangelist that Postman refers to in his book was Jim Bakker. Jim Bakker did not experience his fall until several years after this book was written. Jim and his wife Tammy Faye are textbook examples of what Postman refers to in his book. No matter how you feel about the Bakkers, and nobody my age and younger probably even knows who they are, but they had a successful Christian TV program where they entertained audiences with singing and testimonials and puppet shows and the likes. I believe they became so focused on entertaining their audiences and raising money to keep the show going, they lost the mission of what they had started the show for, and it became their downfall. This type of entertainment is exactly what Postman is warning us about. When the show started as an entertaining way to share the gospel moved to the back seat and the entertainment took the wheel. However, I do not think Postman ever saw the time coming where shut-ins would be able to watch their local church services via their smart telephone, or as Postman says, their microcomputers. I do not feel that he could have imagined how the medium of television and internet worship services could be utilized in the manner they are currently during this COVID-19 epidemic. Politics is another area that Postman feels has changed forever due to television. There is an unreal amount of money spent on television ads each election cycle, where each candidate tells us how marvelous they are and how terrible their opponent is. Postman covers extensively how we are bombarded with the appearance of people on TV. I remember watching a TV program several years ago, and oddly enough, this particular TV program's aim was to prove the point that when it comes to television, looks are everything. The host of the show traveled around showing average people out on the street 2 profile pictures of candidates and asked the participants, based on the photos, who would they vote for and why. Obviously, most of the time, the better-looking person in the 2 photos was chosen. After the choice was made and they asked the question, why, was asked. They would give a response like, this person seems to be more trustworthy, or they seem to be more personable than the person in the other photo. Then at last, the host of the program would reveal that their choice was an actual candidate running for office, or the person in the photo they had chosen was a convicted felon on fraud charges or something similar. The one thing that stood out to me about this program was not one of the participants asked about any of the candidates from the photos, policies, or how they felt was the right way for the country. They went right along with the host's request and chose who they would vote for based on appearance alone. I believe Postman is spot on with this chapter of his book, and he would be disgusted with how it has gotten progressively worse over time. Education is another topic that Postman devotes to a chapter. Postman felt that TV had become its own curriculum. TV had made its own rules to develop its so-called education. Education of what? Postman felt like TV was doing a bad job of educating us on everything. I will agree with Postman that programs such as Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers could hardly take the place of the classroom and was basically the lesser of two evils when it came time for children to watch TV. Postman seems to hit the nail on the head in the subject of how TV and now internet has affected education. In the world we live in, now if we need to find an answer to a question that we do not have the answer to, only thing we have to do is say, "Hey Google," or "Okay Siri," and away they go to retrieve the information that we have asked them for. Never having to learn what the actual answer is, but only learning where to find the answer. Years ago, if someone was working on their car and needed to know how to perform a certain task, they would go and buy a Chilton's or a Haynes manual for their particular model of automobile. Now all one has to do is a quick YouTube search to watch someone else with more experience perform the task for them. This is certainly not to say that I have not utilized these resources myself, but it hardly means that I have an education in these areas. A recurring theme throughout Postman's book is he is always comparing Orwell's 1984, written in 1949, and Huxley's A Brave New World, written in 1931. Postman seems to agree that Huxley's prediction of what the future of the world would look like came closer to becoming real than Orwell did. Orwell seemed to predict that the government would take over and tell us how to think and feel and control history by limiting the books we would read. Huxley seemed to predict that the government wouldn't take over and that the books, we would gladly give over our books up for something else. Postman believes that something else was television. Postman ends his book by telling us that what had afflicted the people in A Brave New World was not that they were laughing instead of thinking, but they did not know what they were laughing about and when they had stopped thinking. I think he closes with this to get us to think for ourselves, to ask ourselves, at what point did being entertained become the most important thing in our lives? If you have watched my previous videos earlier in the semester, we covered J.P. Moreland's book, Love God with All Your Mind. In chapter 4 of Moreland's book, he covers 7 traits of the empty self. These traits include being individualistic, being infantile, narcissistic, passive, sensate, having lost the art of developing an interior life, and last but not least, the empty self is hurried and busy. I think we can all agree that these adjectives describe most of us at times. We all crave alone time, and every once in a while, we can all act a little immature and selfish from time to time as well. I think this is a result of what Postman has warned us about, that the culture that we have come accustomed to with the world at our fingertips, we do not have a real need for education and personal relationship with others. But can the church play a role in reversing these problems of the culture that we ourselves have allowed TV to cause? Yes, I feel it can, but not in the sense that the way the church was portrayed in the movie Footloose, where the pastor controlled the church and the town and told them what they could watch and what they could listen to. I feel the role the church can play in reversing this is to promote, first of all, that everyone personally be in their Bibles and quit showing up at church services as if you were going to participate in a live studio audience of a TV program. But it all boils down to personal responsibility. The church is not a building, but the people inside of it. So if church, which is each and every believer, wants to influence the people around them, then we need to start by emulating Christ in our own lives and not the world. Thank you, and God bless.